So how do you know that the Bible is true? Or more specifically, how do you know that it's divine? How do you know that it's from God and that it's the Word of God? Your answer to that question should be more than just, well, my parents or, well, my pastor. No, 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 no. I'm saying, what about you personally? At some point, all of us must individually consider the veracity of the Bible. Christianity is not just about how our parents raised us or what our pastor teaches us, but it has to be personally investigated and understood by us. I mean, right? Don't get me wrong. You should definitely be thankful for godly parents or for a Christ-like pastor who maybe was a formative influence during your childhood. But don't forget that hundreds of millions of Islamic people were raised to believe the Quran is the word of God, and Hindu people were raised to believe that their sacred writings were divine. And by the way, the Hindu religion, their religious text teaches that the earth rests upon 4 elephants. And those 4 elephants are standing on a turtle. Millions of Hindus were raised to believe that. It seems absurd, and it is. I'm saying that individually, personally, you have to have something more than just, I was raised in a Christian home, or I was raised in a predominantly Christian country, so that makes me a Christian. Further, you have to have something more than, I believe the Bible is a divine book because it claims to be divine. Because so do the other so-called sacred writings. They claim divinity as well. Here's what I'm saying. I believe unequivocally that this is a divine book and that it is the Word of God, and I believe that by faith, but not just a blind faith. I personally have looked closely at the evidence for the veracity of the Bible, and that's what I suggest that you should do. For me, it was the prophecies that convinced me. It was the prophecies predicted and then the prophecies fulfilled. When I read the prophecy of Isaiah 7:14 and then understood that approximately 700 years later, a man named Matthew believed that Jesus of Nazareth was the fulfillment of that prophecy, all of a sudden my faith was no longer just my mama's faith or my spiritual mentor's faith, but my faith was then tied to Matthew's faith. As I studied the Bible over these years, I have been amazed with how Old Testament prophecies include very specific details, and then hundreds of years later, those prophecies were fulfilled with flawless accuracy. Another example is that the Old Testament book of Micah prophesies the specific place where the Messiah would be born, and then approximately 700 years later in the New Testament, a man named Luke records a series of unlikely circumstances which led Jesus of Nazareth to be born in Bethlehem. What about the book of Zechariah, which predicts that the Messiah would enter Jerusalem lowly and that he would ride on a donkey? And then approximately 520 years later, the New Testament writer Mark records the fulfillment of that prophecy. If that's not specific enough for you, the Old Testament prophet Zechariah prophesied so many of the details of Jesus' betrayal by Judas. Frankly, it's mind-blowing. Zechariah predicted that it would be 30 pieces of silver. Are you catching this? The prophet specifically recorded the metallic composition of the coinage. It wasn't gold and it wasn't copper. It was specifically silver. And then 500 plus years later, Matthew recorded that specific fulfillment of prophecy. Zechariah also explains that they were going to haggle over that price, and the New Testament records the fulfillment of that haggling. And not only was it silver, and not only was there haggling, but it was 30 pieces of silver. Those are specific details, again, hundreds of years later, verified in the New Testament. And to this point, I haven't even said anything about the prophecy concerning the way the Messiah would die. Before anybody even understood what Roman crucifixion was, Isaiah 53 lays it out in detail, exactly what would happen to Jesus 700 years later. And again, this idea of crucifixion was not understood by anybody in Isaiah's day, yet Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all record the fulfillment of the specific details of Isaiah 53. This is staggering, and it strengthens my faith, and I hope it does yours as well. It's no doubt that Christianity is a religion based on faith, because without faith, it's impossible to please God, and faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. However, the Christian faith is not a completely blind faith. There is so much evidence for the veracity of the Bible that it truly is staggering. There's lots more that I could have said, but my time is gone. Please comment below and let me know your favorite evidence for the veracity of the Bible. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. But most importantly, please share this video with others so that this content can potentially provide Bible-based strength for their life as well.